Great. Thank you, Monica. Yes, good evening. Thank you for joining us for our first Distinguished Speaker Series of this semester. A lot of you probably have joined us in past semesters. If not, we welcome you and we're excited to have you for our kickoff, but also throughout the semester for fall and spring. I am Corinne Coulter, the program director, and before we get started and introduce our speaker, I just wanted to give a couple of logistics. We are in webinar form, so we cannot see or hear you. You will have an opportunity to ask questions, and once we get to that portion, we just ask that you use the chat feature or the Q&A feature. You'll submit your question there, and then I will bring you over as a panelist and ask you to unmute, ask your question, and then I'll send you back to the attendee list. If you are attending for class credit, I do not have the form that you need to fill out, nor do you need to send your one pager to me. You will send that to your headmaster or whatever teacher it is that you have that due to receive that exploration credit. If you're just here for the evening, we're excited and hope that you will ask questions of our speaker tonight. With that, I will turn it over to GJ Snyder. He is our chairman of the board for EfTA, and he is going to help us introduce our first speaker to kick us off this semester.
Great. Thank you very much, Corinne. My name is GJ Snyder, and I'm happy to introduce tonight's speaker, Jeremy Becker. Jeremy has carved a niche for himself in the ever-evolving landscape of technology, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Holding a dual degree in psychology and finance from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, he possesses a keen insight into what draws people to products and the know-how to render them profitable. In 2016, he delved into the startup ecosystem as the VP of Operations and Product at Ontuitive. He managed hundreds of customers and spearheaded the phase-out of an outdated product, marking his initiation into startup dynamics. The venture capital area beckoned next, and as the managing director at the Stage Fund, Jeremy orchestrated the acquisition and restructuring of startups that were facing turbulence. This tenure was invaluable, arming him with the insights on pitfalls to avoid and strategies to thrive in lean environments. His affinity for one of these acquisitions, Zeal Technologies, saw him transitioning to become its VP of Product. While nurturing a passion project aimed at fostering government engagement and transparency, he confronted the intricacies of government sales and procurement cycles. In executive education at the esteemed Kellogg School of Business refined his approach. And in September of 2021, he partnered with his best friend and went full bore on Colverleaf AI. We welcome Jeremy Becker as our guest speaker this evening, and we'll turn it over to him.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the intro, GJ. Corinne and Monica, thank you for organizing. I am excited to tell you all a little bit more about me, a little bit more about being a startup founder, and where I kind of see AI is going. And really, I'm going to keep most of that conversation around how I think folks in your shoes could start to think about building a company around it, finding which companies work with around it, things like that. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and share my deck here. So as I was putting this together, this isn't like some grand mantra of mine, and I definitely don't intend to like lecture too hard to you guys, but as I was just putting this together, these two threads of patience and curiosity kept coming back up. I am not a very patient person. I would assume most people who start startups aren't. I do like to think that I am curious though, and I am sure as high schoolers, patience is not the easiest virtue to grab, not to speak in generalities. But yeah, these two things are very important lessons I've learned along the way. Nothing ever happens as fast as you want it to, but if you're patient and you wait it out, you will get to see the fruits of your labor, and just to be curious in general. So I'm going to start just kind of with my timeline here. The whole goal of this saying it's okay to take your time. I went to University of Illinois, double majored. I was free law. I got a free ride to Washington University in St. Louis. about 2 weeks before, I had a panic attack and decided I wasn't ready for more schooling. So I moved to Chicago. I worked at Deloitte, which is a major consulting firm. That also wasn't the fit for me at the time. So, and this might get me in trouble if folks on here are teachers. I moved to Denver and I worked on a food truck and music festivals. I bartended when it wasn't music festival season. So not really great things to add to your resume, but I do think I learned a ton. And one of the things we look for when we're hiring at Cloverleaf are these non-traditional backgrounds, specifically in sales or customer success roles or product roles. I really think everyone should have to work in the service of other humans for some part of their life, because I think it teaches you a lot of lessons about just how to be a good person. There's that old saying of you can really tell like what someone's morals are by how they treat people that can't help them. And it's also very humbling. So once again, kind of non-traditional background in that sense. I got a grown-up job and started working at a cube farm, but I found that because I was ready and I was hungry and I was interested in really everything that was going on, I grew really quickly there. About a year or just under a year in, I moved to my first startup job, as they talked about. Once again, really hungry, really curious just about everything. That company got acquired because I was so just kind of interested in everything that was happening. I actually really helped with that acquisition. The guy who ran the private equity firm asked me to join. Then I left, as I'm trying to not repeat my bio too much, but I left because I really liked one of those acquisitions, and ran as the VP of product there while I was side hustling Cloverleaf. And it's funny, it says I ran into the intricacies of government sales cycles. We ran into the fact that it's really hard to sell to the government. And not only was that hard for a startup, it allowed us to pivot to use our company and our data to help people sell to the government. So actually the way I'm connected here is through someone at Waste Connections. Those are the people that pick up your trash, obviously have large government contracts. It's hard for them to keep track of those all across the country. So, once again, I don't want to bore you too much with government data. But one really important lesson there is we were able to pivot. So when I was just side hustling it, I was managing a dev team out of Peru in my part-time, and it's very specific lesson. Nearshoring development talent is very difficult unless you speak Spanish and can fly to Peru twice a week. But with that pivot came the real belief, and this came in the way of an AT&T contract, that there is something here. And so with that, I was able to quit my job, bring on my best friend as my co-founder, and we set off on Cloverleaf, as it says there, went full bore. One other really important thing that happened in this time, right around the start of this year, I actually stepped down as CEO. My best friend and co-founder stepped in as CEO, and I took a role focusing just on product and sales. And there was a few reasons for this. One, the company really needed an experienced full-time salesperson, but also we found out, and this was very humbling for me, but I've been very happy since I did it, that raising money is not my best thing. I've loved running the company, but running a venture-backed startup, you are raising money all day, every day. That is all you're doing. You don't get to run your company. You don't get to do sales. You don't get to do any of the fun stuff with your company. You are raising money all day, every day. Some people are great at it, a la Adam Newman, great at raising money. That's a guy from WeWork. Not the best at actually running a company. So we switched. And once again, it was humbling, but it was, I guess, just, really taking a look and knowing what you're good at and what you derive joy from. And we've been much more successful since then. All right. So be curious. It's the most important thing that I've learned in my life. And it's really everything about product and everything about sales and building a startup is all about curiosity. The first one there is also about life. Often the most interesting person in the room is the person that's not actually saying that much. It's the person that's curious in what other people are doing. There's the old saying, the most important or interesting thing about your partner is that they're interested in you. So I just say that, I'm not, once again, I don't want to lecture, but if you find that your dates aren't going too well, maybe talk a little bit less about yourself and ask more questions about whoever you're out with. To that point, you already know everything that you know. So if you just want to go out to hear yourself talk, that's fine. People don't really find that very interesting or attractive, but there's a lot you can learn. Pretty much I'm sure you all know a lot that I could learn. And if you don't ask people those questions to try to dig into more about them, you will never learn those lessons that could be incredibly valuable. Now, to focus this more on a business sense, this is essentially all product is. And any good startup is really only as good as its product, right? So you can go out and, look at people trying to reach a roof and say, all right, I'm going to invent jetpacks for shoes. You can go out, build this thing without ever talking to anyone and without being curious at all about what the real problem is. And, jetpacks for shoes, you're like, that's great. It solves it. Sure, they're wildly expensive and they break all the time and they're really dangerous. And it turns out like a ladder would have been much better at solving that problem instead of going and creating jetpacks for shoes. Product sales, it's all about listening to people and finding out what their problem is. You need to understand in their own words what the issue is and what the scale of it is. I feel like I'm going to end up beating up on Adam Newman from WeWork, but it turns out people didn't want We Airlines and We Live and all of these other things. They wanted affordable real estate that they could have offices in and sure some like cool perks and stuff. But that wasn't a feasible business with how cheap he was renting it out. So it's about really understanding, and I have some like recommended readings at the end of this that I'm happy to share in like text format somehow about how you can test this out. One of the ones that I love is called the mom test. And it's essentially saying, if you have a good idea, don't run it by your mom because she loves you very much. She's going to tell you it's great. But it essentially gives you a way to test if your hypothesis is true about what problem you're solving and that is by asking questions instead of being prescriptive with a solution. So don't go out saying you know exactly what you're doing. Really focus on asking people what their problems are. I'm also earlier in my career too, my curiosity is a big reason of why I was successful, not just in my role, but I really wanted to know how things worked, why things were working that way. And that just kind of led to more and more opportunities. With that, being curious allows you to be ready for those opportunities, right? So you're not, bullheaded, I'm going to be this. You are more flexible. You can like adapt to different conditions and take different opportunities as they present themselves to you. So it's a little cheeky up at the top there, but AI will fix everything. You guys are coming of age at a really interesting time. I kind of think it would be the same as like coming of age when the internet was first becoming widely available. It is the biggest technological tool that has come out in my lifetime. I was just a little bit after the internet. It was around when I was a kid, but like if I was in high school, like you guys are at a very, very interesting time for things to be happening. And I have a ton of questions for you guys about how do they handle to make sure that your article or your essays weren't written by ChatGPT? Because most of the tools that test that are still in their infancy and don't work very well. I'm not trying to give you bad ideas here. I'm just curious. But I think a lot of what will happen with you guys is it'll be just like the internet. Like before, people used to get mad if people were doing research on the internet. And it's like, no, it's just a great tool that you're going to have to learn to use. So on that side, I would recommend doing your own research into something that they call prompt engineering, which is how to work with different AIs, set time to learn it. I say this to all of my friends who are professionals in their 30s, which is like set time to learn it, work with it, see how it can help you in your job. Also with that, you guys are at a cool moment where you have people in your lives that are working jobs that likely could be improved by AI. So you have a great group of people to go ask what their problems are. Like you can talk to your parents, teachers, other leaders that you know, and just ask them what their problems are. What's hard for them? What's monotonous for them? Great things AI can fix. And then you get to, you could craft like a V2 mom is one of the things. And once again, I have some resources I can send over. Another great way to think about this, or one framework, is called jobs to be done. And that jobs to be done is like, what job can your product or platform do, and how valuable is that job? So I'm gonna talk about Cloverleaf in all of these regards in a second here. But just saying, like, go ask people questions. Who knows, you could, become a software founder like halfway through college or something. I would say finish school, do it right, but okay. So with Cloverleaf AI, what we do is we gather and organize government meeting data. So I know that sounds really dry, but if you look at the third bullet point on here, the government is the largest buyer in the country. $3.25 trillion every year are spent just at a local government level. So that's something I had no idea about until I started doing a little digging into my market and seeing how big this opportunity actually was. And then at first, I started talking to people that worked in the government, asking them, oh, no, sorry, I was really prescriptive. I was like, hey, I have this solution. Do you want to buy it? And it was all about transparency and engagement. Call me a pessimist. I learned pretty quickly that the government doesn't necessarily want to drive transparency and engagement specifically at a local level, but we still felt like there was something here. So we flipped it. We went to a startup accelerator, and with that, we got introduced to people where I could say, what are your issues with government? What are the problems that you're running into? And a lot of it is that there's just a lot of government. There's too much of it to monitor. And our platform was really good at distilling that out and making sure, or like just giving people just what they needed instead of a lot of noise. And then with these newer advancements in large language models and AI, we're able to start getting predictive, building out summaries from the government meeting, and things like that. So that's really what I would recommend about AI. Just look at it as a tool, but get really familiar with it, because it's not going away. Once again, you guys are at an awesome time, like Zuckerberg and MySpace. Like, you guys are at a very cool time where I think you could really, do some cutting edge things with AI. One thing I will say, the first and most important part of any AI company is having your own large proprietary data set. A lot of people, so like with us, it's government meetings. A lot of people are just building wrappers on ChatGPT, and I'm sorry to say anyone could do that. So make sure you're like thinking about what problem to start. Most people could do that. But think about what kind of problem you're solving and think about it in that lens. And then I just have some stuff about what I've learned as a founder. Before you jump in, and I think this could probably be assigned to any big life commitment, but I would say make sure your personal life is in order, because things happen really fast, and turns out it's not easier to get all of that stuff in line once you're already on a roller coaster, because life will throw enough confusing things at you along the way. Starting a company is the hardest thing professionally I've ever done. Having people's livelihoods dependent upon you is incredibly difficult. It might feel glamorous or sound glamorous, but if you're looking at it for it to be glamorous, more often than not, it's, you working a 14-hour day and it being a really bad day, or you being faced with a position where every single option is a loss, but you got to pick one. So it's really hard. That said, it is the most fulfilling work I've ever done. The wins feel like so much bigger because your heart and soul is in it. With that, though, be cautious of the booms and busts. I know stoicism is a really popular concept these days, but it is helpful to just kind of, be water, roll with the punches, good or bad. You can't, otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy being way too high on stuff one day and way too low the other. And it's not a good way to go through it. A burden shared is halved. So like, be open and honest with your problems. Not to use a football analogy, but in the Super Bowl a few years back, the Seahawks decided to throw the ball on 1st and goal when they had the best running back in the league, ended up throwing an interception. All this to say, trust your teammates. Your teammates are good there. You chose them for a reason. although it might not always feel like that when you're assigned on a group project in high school. When you grow up and you get to pick your teammates, they're good at what they do. Trust them to do it. And I like to tie this into me stepping down as CEO. A big part of that is my mother got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I had to spend a lot of time with her. You can't really run a company and help your family in that regard. But my co-founder, when I went to him, he is my best friend. That made things easier. But he was right there to step up, right? And he's done an incredible job as the now CEO. One thing investors love to see, and I know I'm like way cart before the horse, but it's also a very mentally healthy way to run a startup or work in startups, but it's running business like an experiment. They being investors, know that your company is just a hypothesis, right? You just have this idea. You think these people will pay this amount and this will lead to a great business. So running everything like an experiment, another part of being curious. So not going in saying, I know exactly what's going to happen here. This is how this is going to work. If I had done that, we never would have pivoted into our new mode of selling to private companies. We would have kept beating our head against the wall trying to sell to governments. So once again, you either win or you learn. There's no losing in business. It can feel an awful lot like there is some days, but as long as you're learning, growing, adapting, and you do it in small enough increments where you're not gambling the whole house on something, you will slowly see results. You'll know where to invest, and then people will want to invest in you. And then I just have be patient and flexible. Nothing moves fast enough for my shoes, but if I sit back and I allow life to kind of come to me and allow things to happen, it works out most of the time, or it doesn't, and then you learn from it. And not to get all Buddhist and whatnot, but things happen, and you can try to force your will on the world, or you can roll with it, react to it, be responsive, curious, and flexible. I didn't hit our full 30 minutes. I have some readings that I'd recommend. I can share those, but I'm happy to go into Q&A. And once again, guys, I'm an open book, so I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. One book on here, actually, I'll call it out. When I was your guys' age, I thought salesman was a swear word. I thought it was a really bad thing to be. I thought, you get the used car salesman in your head. We are all salespeople. You're selling your parents on where to go to dinner. You're selling your buddies on what to do on a Friday night. So the third book down here, To Sell is Human, was really what changed that for me. And that essentially all you're doing in sales is connecting people with a solution. And we all do it all the time. So if you stop thinking about it like a negative thing, it really becomes a powerful tool that you can have in your tool belt.
Great, thank you. So students, while you are thinking of your questions and typing them, again, you can use the chat feature or you can use Q&A. You will ask your question live. If you're having mic issues, just type that and I won't try to bring you over because I know we've had some of that in the past. So I'll start us off with a question. We know kind of technology world, that industry is always ever changing. How are you and your team keeping up with all of the changes that happen within the technology world? Are you doing education? Do you do trainings? Like what does that look like? Since that is kind of the top industry that it's different, every 2 hours, I feel like there's an update on something every multiple updates every day.
Yeah, that's a great question. Short answer is you can't stay on top of all of it, right? So the longer answer is that I'm kind of a nerd and I really enjoy this stuff. So weirdly, Twitter is a great place to get a lot of your news. Following where capital is flowing to can also be really helpful. So there's a site called Crunchbase that announces new funding. And following where that money goes is what will be the next generation of technology that you work with. That can be messy though, because it can lead you to things like NFTs are the future. So sometimes you just got to gut check things and think about whether or not a picture of a monkey is actually worth $5 million. I would venture to say that it isn't, and it's kind of proving to not be. Yeah, so Crunchbase, TechCrunch is really good if you're looking for like startups. And then a few folks you can follow, like Mark Andreessen is a great Twitter account that kind of talks about the future. There's a podcast called the All In Pod that has Chamath, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to say it, Jason Calacanis and David Sachs, all former Silicon Valley guys or current Silicon Valley guys in some cases, that talk a lot about the future of where tech is heading. And we were actually mentioned on the All In podcast. So maybe I'm a little biased, but.
Great, thank you. Okay, we do have some questions coming in. So students, I'm going to bring you over one at a time. Aniket, I'm going to bring you over, ask you to unmute and ask your question, then I'll send you back to the attendee list. Work. Oh, mic's not working. Okay, I'll read it. Sorry. How did you gain experience about technology behind AI as a flexible person? What experience do you have in it?
In AI, my experience is largely was largely as a user, and then kind of applying that. So I don't code anything. I don't know how to code. I could make a very bad website for you. That's about it. I know some Python along with that. But a lot of it is being a user of it and reading about it so I understand what it's capable of, and then applying it to a different problem set. The best way I would say, once again, is like I've taken multiple courses on prompt engineering, because a lot of what you'll find is like, to use a corny example, I'm kind of, and this is going to make me sound like I think I'm way too cool, but in my arrangement, I'm Steve Jobs and my co-founder is Steve Wozniak. Or like architect versus engineer. I can dream something up, but I need him to tell me it can actually be built. I can stop sharing actually. Yeah, so I would say just play with it, work with these different platforms and understand what they are capable of. Do a lot of trial and error. I think a paid OpenAI memberships is only $20, so you can see all of the newest stuff as it comes out. $20 a month, I should say. Yeah, that's all I got on that one.
Okay, and then we had another question come in with a mic that's not working. They're wanting to know like what Cloverleaf AI does.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, we take and we organize government data and sell it to private companies. What that looks like in actuality is from your school board meetings, local city councils up to the federal government. We take the meetings themselves. And at first, our first little bit that we did was we transcribed them and timestamped each word. So I don't know if you guys are in the Woodlands, but if like the Woodlands, Texas is talking about a new waste RFP, you would have to have someone sitting through that 5-hour meeting. I'm sure we all know how exciting government meetings are, to know about that. So the first thing we were doing was just matching need to, this mention to a salesperson in a waste role. Once again, that is the largest buyer in the country, spend $3.25 trillion every year. But the AI portion of that, outside of gathering the data, right? Like I said, the first step of any good AI company is gathering the data. So we did that. The AI helps us identify where they are, and also a spam filter that we run it through. But now we can also get, there's a concept called intent analysis, where we can get predictive to say, based on how they're talking, we know that this city is going to need a new excavator. So knowing that, being slightly ahead of them actually saying they need a new excavator can be really helpful for a company like BirdCamp, because now they can go into that community, they know who to talk to. Once again, this might sound pessimistic, but they can help influence that RFP. Another thing that we're really helpful with is government affairs teams and lobbying shops. Lobbying, I know, also gets a very bad name, but truth be told, it is how most stuff gets done in this country. So we can help those government affairs firms stay ahead of regulations, better understand regulations, educate populations about what their company is doing. I don't know if that I can try to
And
get
you just
a little
use like
more.
the recordings of meetings?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we
Okay.
take the recordings of government meetings, and on its face, what that mostly looks like is our clients get an email that jumps them to the exact moment in the meeting where whatever they need is mentioned. So they get who was said, how it was said, who said it, and the contact information, so they can reach out to them from there. So think of it as like a sales enablement tool for government sales.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Chloe, you have your hand raised. I'm going to bring you over and ask you to unmute.
Hi.
Hi.
So I just wanted to, I'm doing a school project currently about how AI is affecting our environment, and I just wanted to get your input on that.
Our environment, like the environment, like climate.
Yeah, like how much it's like contributing to climate change because of how much like carbon emissions come from AI models.
Oh, interesting. Um, yeah, so I guess my take on that, I'm somewhere between an optimist and a fatalist when it comes to climate change. I do really believe in humanity's power to solve problems, but I also think, and this is the more fatalist side, is that in order for anything to succeed, there's got to be money in it. So until there's a green solution that makes money for people, it's not going to happen. I know that's once again pretty pessimistic. But specifically AI, I don't know. I would have to say in my head, it would be like a pretty minimal amount of energy, unless you include like blockchain and crypto stuff as AI. But I'm open to you telling me what the numbers look like and where I should be looking.
If I remember correctly, I was reading about how like a single AI model could emit 6,000 or 626,000 like pounds of carbon into the ozone, and I just wanted to like I don't know. I just wanted to get like your opinion on how you think that's gonna like go, if it's gonna be like more sustainable in the future, or if we're gonna like try
Sure.
to make less carbon emissions and like I don't really know how to explain it, sorry.
No. It's a great question, and I appreciate it. I can guarantee you our AI models don't do anything near that. So we'd have to be dealing with some like pretty heavy duty, like stuff that like Palantir or one of those groups is working on, because in like a massive server farm associated with that. Once again, I do think it will become financially viable and financially exciting for people to be green in the near future, and that will drive people to doing it. But most change, and once again, I like you guys should be so much more optimistic than me. But most change in this country, in my practice, doesn't happen until people can make money on it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck with your project.
Let's say,
Thank you.
Chloe, are you in science fair? Will we see you at science fair and we can learn more about it and pass it on as to what you've learned?
Oh, no, it's for AP seminar.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can I jump in with a quick question?
Yep.
How do you, just in starting a business, there's obviously, you do everything you can to kind of mitigate risk, but there's obviously risk involved. You talked about that moment when you're like, now other people are depending on me to be successful. Like, how do you go from that moment of, we think we have something really good, the technology is good, the idea is good, we think there's a market for it, to making that leap? And were there any moments of failure that you would say, I want to share this because I learned from this, and hopefully you will too? It's kind of a two-part.
Yeah. I mean, there's always so much faith involved, right? Like you really do have to just believe that. My co-founder and I talk about this often, that it's kind of like the ridiculous confidence that it takes to be a great athlete. Not saying that either of us are great athletes, we're not, but you have to be like, yeah, no, I do this. This is me. I'm a star. I hit the shot in the fourth quarter. There is some like blazing confidence that comes with it. Of course, you can like run the models and better understand, like, you know what? I'm not getting any younger. We started the company when I was 29. So it's like, I'm still in my 20s. I could start this. I wouldn't poo-poo starting one while you can still be on your parents' health insurance. It's probably a good idea. But yeah, there's a lot of faith in it. As far as moments of stress or like, scary moments, our company has almost died 3 times, where we've been like days away from having one payroll left, and then an invoice comes in or an investor decides to back you. So there's a lot of those, and that's why I say, like, the lesson learned for us is patience. One of our company values is called stay in the pocket, or is stay in the pocket. So we recommend just kind of like sitting in the moment, staying flexible, pliable, and not overreacting to a negative thing, not losing sleep over it, taking it as it comes, kind of being in the moment. Yeah, I hope that answers that. There are a million lessons that you learn, but the biggest one is just like probably not the end of the world here.
Okay, we had another. Oh, Monica, did you have another one?
I just said thank you. That's
Oh, okay. We had another one come in. What AI tools do you and your team use to develop Cloverleaf? PyTorch, OpenCV. What type of AI models are incorporated?
I would need my technical co-founder here to handle that. I do know, no, I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm not even going to say it. And that's the benefit of being, I actually build out our kind of fake door models. And I just do that I've used, Bard, Claude, OpenAI, all of those. And like I said, I'm a very iffy coder, but I build out what I want it to do, and then our team does it in real life, if that makes sense.
Oh, added to like the concept, not the actual technical details. Does that add to that question?
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, we build it out through conversations. We don't really use AI tools to build it out. Conceptually, we'll talk about what the distance is from what they actually need, not just what they want. That's why I had that quote on there, that Henry Ford quote of, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So finding out what people really need, and then once again, I'll just use like OpenAI, the OpenAI API, and build out like a faked out version of that, that I can then turn over to my dev team once it's hit our designers and we've worked with them on that. I can kick over to our dev team to make it real life. I hope that answers that more or sufficiently.
What are some like skills as far as communication, problem solving, kind of those type of skills, or maybe personal traits do you think would someone should kind of practice, develop to be successful within this field of opening, like starting a business, working contract work, in the technology field? Kind of what are some of those skills and traits?
Yeah. So outside of curiosity, I really cannot stress strongly enough how important keeping a level head is, because sign a deal that makes your company valued at 10x what it was 5 minutes ago, and you'll want to like lose your mind with excitement and be running all over the place, and then you can find out 15 minutes later that they're going to renege on the deal, and then you could crumble into a big ball of depression and sadness, and think that you're a terrible person because you're going to have to lay everyone off and all of this. But if you can generate some kind of sense that you can stay in the moment, take things as they come, not way overreact or underreact to things, just kind of keep a calm, level head on it. Other skills, once again, I strongly recommend working in the service of other humans. It teaches you how to be humble, how to ask questions in very polite ways. To that curiosity thing, never ask closed-ended questions. Always ask questions that make people talk, because when people talk, they'll tell you what they really want. Yeah, some amount of foolish arrogance that you're actually the people that can do this is also very helpful. Yeah, I'm sure there's other ones. Don't be afraid to sell. Sales is the most important thing in any company ever, because someone has to pay for it. Don't forget that at the end of the day, whatever you're making, someone's got to pay for it. So you need some kind of sales engine. If you're lucky enough that can all just be inbound and self signups and all of that, not impossible, but most of the time you need salespeople, and it's often best if the founder is willing and capable of doing that sales. It really connects with people better. So learn how to sell, which is mostly just learning how to ask questions.
Did you have other good ideas that you just weren't sure how to monetize? Like you thought this is a thing people need, but the kind of the structure wasn't there for it to get paid for it.
Yeah. But I'm sure it's more like I've had things that really frustrated me, and I thought it frustrated everyone. And then it turns out it was like largely just me. But I've never met, and this is probably more apropos for the adults on the call, I've never met like a SharePoint that I liked, or a Google Drive or anything. They're always such a mess. So my idea was some kind of AI chatbot that could scan your enterprise, or for students, I don't know if you like sign up for your own courses or anything like that, but could essentially have all the rules and everything that you needed. And people are actually building this now. So maybe it wasn't such a bad idea, but everyone I talked to was like, no, that's a waste of money. Like no one's going to buy that. Then I'm sure like we all have ideas. We watch a lot of Shark Tank in this house, and it's really easy to poo-poo ideas. But we've all had some of our silly ideas that we're very passionate about. But make sure you ask other people to make sure they care about it too, and that they care with their wallets, not just that they care because they think it's a good idea.
I would think Shark Tank would be there's some great lessons in there. The things that you maybe think are obvious that the person selling doesn't, and just the how to approach it and how to get people on board and what kind of data they want. I would think there'd be lots of really good lessons and takeaways kind of in that, in just looking at the models that people are offering about why they think their idea is amazing.
Yes, 100%. Like know your revenue numbers backwards and forwards. Also, most of the deals on Shark Tank are total ripoffs, so don't go to Shark Tank. They want way too much equity. That's another good lesson is keep a very close eye on your equity. That's the whole reason you're doing this. It can be easy to partner with people and slowly get rid of it because they know that that's the actual valuable thing in this whole game. So keep a very close eye on it because no one else is going to do it for you.
Great. We have a lot of, as you know, our audience is high school students. What were some of the things that you were involved with in high school? And were there any particular involvements, clubs, opportunities that gave you good insights that were kind of early stepping stones for the things that you do now?
Yeah. So I played baseball throughout high school. I also went to a massive high school. I don't know how big. the school is, but it was like my high school is 4,500 kids. Um,
About the same here.
so, oh wow, okay, nice. I loved it. I think going to a big school is great because you get like I've never even heard of AP seminar, but it's like awesome that you have like every AP available to you, every sort of class, all of that. So I played baseball, and then I just had a job throughout most of high school. I know that might not be everyone's favorite answer, but I worked in a dry cleaners for a bit. Then I worked in restaurants, and I really think that that's like invaluable lessons about hard work, working in service of others. And then I did like I was very prepared for college, I'll say, as far as like AP courses and stuff go. But take advantage of that. That's something really cool that like a lot of kids don't get access to. I don't think I fully realized how lucky I was to have such great courses that could push me on ideas that most kids don't hit until they're in college. Yeah, I don't know. We had like this thing called the brain bee. I was a psych major, and it was like, I don't know, it was like a spelling bee, but you had to study for that, and then it was like nationwide thing. So I don't know if that helped me directly, but it was something I enjoyed in high school. That was fun.
Speaking of your high school self, what is that piece of advice you wish you could go back and tell your high school self?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that with this whole presentation coming up. As much as I said earlier, it's okay to take your time. I do wish I would have gotten started earlier. I know I said that's kind of what it took me, so I don't begrudge that. But 1 week is 2% of a year, and if you can get thinking in that, you're like, what did I do with this week? So I think I would say like take advantage of more of the free offerings that you have in front of you right now. I know I'm going a little far ahead here, but study abroad. Because at no time in your adult life is anyone going to tell you get to go to a different country for 6 months or longer. I know some people do a full year. And like, God, I hate sounding like the old dude now talking to high school kids, but this is such an exciting time in your life, and you get to have so much fun. Do the studying, do the hard work stuff, but to be good at most things in life, in my practice, it takes well-rounded people, not just super smart people. So have fun, do foolish things. Don't hurt yourself or break the law or anything, but like get in a little bit of trouble, just the right amount of trouble. And also, take your family, be curious. Yeah. I just saw that pop in, about anything. And, once again, you have in a big school like that specifically, you have so many resources, and it can be hard and daunting to advocate for yourself at times, but do it. Go get exactly what you want out of it, because I'm sure you have people willing to fight for you at that school. And don't just settle for a state school because it's cheap and you'll get in. You could probably do a little bit better. Not that there's anything wrong with Austin, Texas. I'm sure you would love it.
Yeah, UT's a big one here, so you might have just ruffled some feathers with.
I only say, and I mean, U of I is like what the USA News and World Report just came out, and it's like the 12th best public university in the country or something like that. So like, it was a great school. I learned a ton, but I sometimes kick myself. It was the only school I applied to. So I guess I would say apply to a few other schools.
I don't think I missed Monica's last question because I was dealing with children things. I don't think she asked a goal question, but what's kind of a 5-year goal that you have for yourself and for Cloverleaf?
Yeah. 5-year goal for myself, it's funny, they've become so very intertwined because the success of one can paint a very different picture for the other. But trying to detach it from monetary things for myself, it would be married because I am engaged currently. Different house, dog, maybe child, maybe not yet child. We'll have to see. That I think that's pretty Cloverleaf dependent. And then not if, just when, I should say. It's not like if we do well, we'll have kids, but yeah. And then with Cloverleaf, be sold or be very close to being sold. Our goal is 5 years from when we started, so theoretically 3 years from now, sell, and we're still on target for it, but it would be like a $900 million acquisition would be the goal. So like ideal, like that's what we're planning for. That's what I would love to have happen. I've learned that life never really pans out the way that you plan it to. The best laid plans of mice and men. But if we're still running the company, I would hope that we just have a bigger team. The team is happy. We're supporting them well. Our customers are happy. Wouldn't be mad if we're also making buttloads of money along with it. But yeah.
Yeah, you'll need that if you add kids into the mix.
That's yep.
There
That's
is
why
one.
do we wait?
Yes, a chat did come in asking how big your team is. How big it's
Sure.
like people wise.
Like whole team?
Yeah.
In-house, we have 27 people. And then we have a few like outsourced teams for various things. Like I said, I talked bad about nearshoring development talent, but for like really repeatable jobs, they can be good. Or as you may know, like OpenAI trained most of their model using a Kenyan workforce. So we do some of that as well.
Yes, go ahead, Monica.
You touched a little bit on it. I mean, about how you stay current. You're really just kind of going out into the world and gathering things, whether it's on X or whether it's on the various podcasts. Like, how do you you know what I mean? It's fascinating, just in a field that is constantly changing, growing. People are becoming more aware of capabilities. Like, how do you keep cutting edge on that?
I mean, my biggest shortcut once again would be follow funding. Finding out what investors are investing in is a great way to understand what the next generation of technology can be or will be. Like Facebook got funded 6 months before it made it outside of Boston. So it can be a really good way to track. And there are like all sorts of reports and trends that you can check. Once again, be wary of snake oil salesmen, NFTs and whatnot. There's a lot of noise and a lot of garbage out there, like S word coins and crypto. But then you look at it, and crypto, at least blockchain, is actually really sound technology. So it can be tricky. I mean, I guess the answer is I don't really have a good way. Having good friends that are smarter than me. You never want to be the smartest person in a room. Otherwise, you're not learning anything. Same with our company here at Colverleaf. We try to hire exclusively people that are smarter than my co-founder and myself. Is a very, very good thing to just kind of keep in mind at all times. There's a lot of pressure if you're the smartest person in the room. There's a lot of learning if you're not.
Thank you.
I feel like I need to look like half the words you just said. Like look up what all of that is. But students, you probably know, so that's why we're here. Just kind of, we're getting close to wrapping up time. You've given out some really great pieces of wisdom and tidbits and advice, and Monica's added some of those. But say we have a student who is sitting on this, is doing the science fair project, or is developing, that's their side thing outside of school, is developing some sort of business in the technology world. What is that? I know that I love to be curious, and having people around, a lot of our panelists talk about like having people around you that are smarter than you or are able to build you up and things. But what's, if you could like combine it into one like piece of advice for that student that maybe they're like, I don't think this is going to work, or maybe this isn't for me, and they're like balancing between doing it and continuing or stopping? What's that thing you would tell them?
Be irrationally confident. It's hard to not give you two. I would
You
say
can give
just
two.
treat-
You're not.
Yeah.
There's no rule.
Well, in long story, like if I were to sum it all up, treat everything like an experiment. That way, you're not getting your heart and your emotions all tied up in this thing that is really outside of you. As long as you work your hardest, you learn a lesson from it. You can't, like, sure, you may want different results, but it won't be as heartbreaking for you. So if it's like something, if it's like a side project of yours, keep working it. Keep working it. Don't continue to hit your head against the wall. Be open to that change. But if you work really hard on something and then it turns out, you know what, yeah, no, there isn't a market here, you will have learned so much that you'll be ready to take to your next experience and your next experiment along with it. I'm also happy. I'm happy to answer questions if anyone is like side hustling something, or if I can be more helpful. If you need a quote for that AI thing, feel free to reach out. I don't know if that's like weird to say with high school kids.
We can share contact information. So if they want to, they can get in contact with me and I can make that happen.
Awesome. And one thing I didn't really touch on, but I should have more, is having good mentors. Once again, having smarter people than you. If you ask people for help, you will be amazed. Maybe I'll make this my one thing. If you ask people for help, you will be amazed at how willing they are to help. People love helping people. So don't be afraid to ask for it.
Especially kids. So that's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you have some resources that you like to share. Are these books, sites? Is that something that you have a list that we could put in the chat to share with folks?
Yeah, I took a picture of it.
We can send a follow-up email. We'll send an email out tomorrow. So that's another option. But I think it's, there are going to be those curious students who are ready to figure out their net, to dig into it a little bit further.
Yeah. So if you have the list of books, the top one on there is not at all about anything we talked about. It was just a great coming of age book that I read in high school that I cannot recommend strongly enough. But what I can also send your way is just some, I can't believe you called it X. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter until forever. There are a few Twitter accounts that I can send your way too, that I will vet first to make sure that they're high school appropriate as well. That I would like to send over, because that is really the best way to keep your pulse on tech.
Great. And so when you sell your company, what will you do next?
Yeah, I love this question. So my fiance and I always talk about opening a coffee shop that she would run, and I would run the food on it. So it would essentially be running another business, but we could treat it as just a labor of love, because as I'm sure you all know, it's very difficult to make money in the restaurant industry. So we'd probably be a loss leader. Yeah, that's our dream. Some coastal town somewhere. We were just in Stinson, California over the weekend, which I think is the best kept secret in California. If you haven't been, it's like an hour outside of San Francisco, and it's amazing.
Well, for the sake of time, we want to thank you for your knowledge and insights, especially in a field that you just keep hearing so much about, right? And so the fact that you have a very specific way that you're putting the technology to use and making money off of it is a great example for these students. We have the DECA clubs around here, the student business competitions are exceptionally popular. And so I know there's students out there that will take those little bits and pieces with them as they kind of build up their entrepreneurial skills. So we thank you, students. Join me in saying thanks to our guest this evening. I do love the fact that you came through another contact of ours, and that's another example to students of kind of how things get done. You talk to one person, they tell you about the next person. You should talk to this person, and especially to your point about the fact that people love to help others, right?
people love to help young people. They love to help others. They love to help students. So students, if you have someone that's doing something that's interesting to you, do that follow-up, ask those questions, come informed, like do your homework on the front end so that you have, you know, a baseline of things to talk about and questions to ask. But I think those are all really great, great bits of wisdom to share. So thank you, students. Like I said, you can put in the chat your thank yous, and we will follow up. Corinne, you want to touch base on other things?
Yes, so I will send out just kind of a wrap email with a quick survey to you guys as students, just to get your feedback. So if you have anything you want us to send to students, I'll send that out tomorrow afternoon, or I can wait until Monday. You tell me what's easier for you. But we will get that information out to you. Our next session will be October 12th, and we'll have Julia Gabor, who is the founder of Kid Grit. So kind of how do you guys as students continue to have that drive and kind of ways of getting through high school and doing it successfully. So we'll have that. And then on the 19th of October, we will be back with one of the deans at the Columbia School of Business. So you can find all of those on our EfTA website. And also we have a What I Wish I Knew podcast where we interview young professionals that you can find on any podcast platform. But we thank you guys again for joining us. And we hope to see you or have you listed and have you join us, since we can't see you, our next sessions coming up this semester. So thank you, Jeremy. And with that, students, we are done.
And
Thanks,
Jeremy,
everybody.